Chapter 1481. Lee's heading nodded in response. That will indeed make things easier. We'll be able to save time as we won't have to examine the properties of your Mecha after the demonstration. Firstly, I'd like to welcome you on behalf of our Mecha Pilot Association. Our vice chairman who is responsible for this area was going to be in attendance as well, but something else came up at the last minute. Our chairman was also unable to make the time to come here, but all of them really wanted to meet you. The chairman specifically instructed me to invite you to join our Mecha Pilot Association. Exceptional Mecha pilots like yourself are in extremely high demand in our association. Would you be willing to consider our offer? Tang Wulin asked. What benefits would I receive if I were to join? Lee's head folded slightly in the face of Tang Wulin's brusque attitude, and he couldn't help but grumble internally about how rude these young people hailing from major families were. Despite this, his smile didn't waver in the slightest as he replied, with your powers and Mecha piloting skills, we'll be able to organize a Mecha pilot grading certificate for you right away. I'm sure you still haven't registered for such a certificate, right? With the certificate, you'll be recognized as a valued member in all of the branches of our association across the entire continent. You'll also be able to undertake missions released by our association if you choose to do so, and those missions all offer very good compensation upon completion. On top of that, our association periodically organizes some events for Mecha pilots to meet up and exchange ideas. Mecha pilots of different grades will have access to different communication platforms, and I'm sure this will be of great help to you. Furthermore, as a high-grade Mecha pilot, you'll receive a lot of support from our association in terms of resources. Tang Wulin asked, what grade Mecha pilot will I be evaluated as? If you can successfully complete the Douluo lightning triangular circuit, we can evaluate you as an 8th grade Mecha pilot right away. Theoretically speaking, the ability to execute such a skill is already enough for you to be evaluated as a 9th grade Mecha pilot, but there are many other prerequisites that have to be satisfied before one can reach that level. For example, a 9th grade Mecha pilot has to have achieved high placings in a certain number of known Mecha competitions. However, due to the special nature of your case, we can make an exception and upgrade you to become a 9th grade Mecha pilot after you complete 3 missions for our association. Lee's heading was clearly very eager for Tang Wulin to become involved with the Mecha Pilot Association on a deeper level. Even though it was proclaimed that mechas could empower even ordinary people, everyone knew that truly powerful Mecha pilots all had to be powerful soul masters as well. Only then would they possess the physical resistance required to use more powerful mechas and unleash more powerful skills, which was why titled Douluos were extremely sought after by the association. Let's do the demonstration first, Tang Wulin replied in an intentionally nonchalant manner, but internally, he was considering his options. His fabricated identity as Oolong was beginning to come under notice, and it would undoubtedly make this new identity more nuanced and realistic if he could earn some accolades for it. As such, it wouldn't be a bad thing to become a graded Mecha pilot. However, he wasn't interested in becoming a 9th grade Mecha pilot, and nor did he intend to complete any missions for the Mecha Pilot Association. Soon, 3 black mechas were prepared for Tang Wulin to choose from. Due to the high degree of difficulty of the Douluo lightning triangular circuit maneuver, he would definitely be using a humanoid mecha, so all 3 of these mechas were humanoid in shape with different features and characteristics. None of these trial mechas were custom made, so they were all quite generic and minimalistic. The choice of mecha didn't really make much of a difference to Tang Wulin, so he chose one at random. After entering the mecha, Tang Wulin quickly inspected its interior, as expected of a mecha from the Mecha Pilot Association. Even though it wasn't a custom-made super mecha, its configuration was quite exceptional. After that, he briefly familiarized himself with the mecha and its tolerance limit, and he couldn't help but be amazed by some of the advanced equipment within the mecha. Are you ready, Your Majesty? Lee's Hepping's voice sounded from within the communicator. I'm ready, Tang Wulin replied. All right, we've cleared the venue, so you can begin at any time. Lee's Hepping put down his communicator and appraised the black mecha within the trial venue from a separate room. All of the testing equipment was ready. As soon as Tang Wulin began, all types of data would be transmitted to Lee's Hepping. He had seen footage of Tang Wulin's execution of the Douluo lightning triangular circuit, and he had been stunned by the maneuver. If it could really be reliably executed, then it would be a monumental skill in the field of mecha piloting. Regardless of what caliber and type of battle was concerned, speed was the most important factor, and such incredible yet controllable speed would change an entire battlefield. Right at this moment, the black mecha within the trial venue sprang into action. It rose up into the air amid a flash of light, having been lifted upward by the propellers on its back and beneath its feet. The data stated that everything was normal, and that nothing out of the ordinary was happening. Right as Lee's Hepping's brows furrowed slightly with befuddlement, the black mecha abruptly shuddered, and a peculiar buzzing sound rang out from within it. Immediately thereafter, the black mecha shot forth like a bolt of black lightning with all of its propellers operating at full power, and 3 thunderclaps rang out almost in complete unison. A perfect black triangle of lightning was created in midair, and everything had taken place in the blink of an eye. If it weren't for the black afterimage left in the wake of the mecha, it would be as if it had never moved at all. Thump. A sonic boom rang out as the black mecha exceeded the sound barrier. Yet as the sonic boom erupted, it had already stopped. The buzzing within the mecha became even more intense, but it didn't explode like that generic yellow mecha in the Bright City Sports Stadium. Everything returned to normal, and it was as if nothing had ever happened. The black mecha slowly descended onto the ground, and Lee's Hepping couldn't help but gulp in a flabbergasted manner. That was it. That was it. He hadn't made any preparatory movements, and he hadn't even allowed the mecha to warm up properly, nor had he spent much time to familiarize himself with the mecha. Yet the maneuver had been completed. How had he managed to withstand the impact from such sharp directional changes executed at such an insane speed? According to the data transmitted to Lee's Hepping, an enormous amount of impact had to be withstood by the mecha pilot while executing the Douluo lightning triangular circuit, and even the average titled Douluo may not be able to withstand it. However, Tang Wulin had managed to do it without even any warm-up, which meant that his physical resistance was at an extremely formidable level. Even more data was quickly flickering across the screen like rain, displaying all types of statistical changes that took place during the execution of the maneuver, and the results were downright staggering. The data stated that the highest speed that Tang Wulin had reached was over thrice the speed of sound, which was over twice as fast as the maximum speed he had reached in the examination. The increase in speed was easy to explain as black mechas were simply far superior to yellow mechas, but with this drastic increase in speed, his body would have to withstand at least thrice the impact compared to when he first executed the maneuver. Was he really still a human? Where did his limit lie? As expected of a super martial soul that had been in existence since ancient times, the blue lightning tyrant dragon martial soul was truly extraordinary. The mecha pilot room was opened, and Tang Wulin jumped out in a nonchalant manner. There was a faint charred scent in the air, which was a result of the flying through air molecules at an excessive speed. Chapter 1482. This black mecha had decent physical resistance, but it was still pushed slightly beyond its limits during the execution of the Douluo lightning triangular circuit. If he had been using his own black mecha, then such an issue wouldn't have occurred. Clap, clap, clap. The sound of applause rang out, and Tang Wulin was given a standing ovation by Lee's Hepping, as well as all of the workers present. All of them were avid mecha enthusiasts, and their hearts were filled with astonishment and excitement after witnessing such a miraculous feat. That was incredible, Your Majesty. Your mecha piloting proficiency is truly extraordinary. From this day forth, the Douluo lightning triangular circuit will be recorded in history. Please allow me to confirm one final time that this is still the name you would like to use. It is, Tang Wulin verified without any hesitation. All right. After completing a series of signatures and registrations, Tang Wulin was given a certificate of authority, as well as an 8th grade Mecha pilot certificate. This was one of the benefits of being so powerful. If he weren't a titled Douluo, there was no way that he would have received an 8th grade Mecha pilot certificate so easily. Lee's Hepping insisted on inviting Tang Wulin to a meal, but Tang Wulin had no intention of wasting any more time here. After placating Lee's Hepping by agreeing to visit the Mecha Pilot Association whenever he had some spare time in the future, he quickly departed. After returning to the Blacksmith Association, Tang Wulin returned to his own room and made a few calls using his soul communicator. In his mind, the visit to the Mecha Pilot Association was completely inconsequential compared to his discovery of the Myriad Beast Plane. With the Myriad Beast Plane under its control, the Spirit Pagoda would be able to garner even more support from Soul Masters, and it would be very difficult for the Tang Sect and Shrek Academy to match its influence in the future. After all, Soul Masters were still the most revered beings on all 3 continents, and this had always been the case. This Joust for a Spouse event was far more complicated than he had expected, and through it, the Spirit Pagoda was achieving its objectives one after another. Even if Shrek Academy and the Tang Sect had been still at the height of their powers, they would be powerless to stop this ploy. Anyone who opposed the development of the Myriad Beast Plane was essentially opposing the entire Soul Master world, and that was the most damning thing about this situation. If he wanted to address the conundrum, then he would have to investigate the Myriad Beast Plane, but that certainly wasn't going to be an easy task. In any case, he had to think of a way to enter the Myriad Beast Plane again. Right at this moment, he suddenly sensed something and abruptly turned around. Who's there? Your senses have become far sharper than before. A gentle voice rang out, and a figure also began to shake before him amid a flash of silver light. She had a head of long silver hair, and her large purple eyes were as translucent as ever. The entire world seemed to dim around her, and Tang Wulin immediately rushed toward her as he exclaimed, Dou Yue. Never did he think that Dou Yue would come to find him, and he had only been able to see her in the promotional footage released by the Spirit Pagoda. Now that the Silver Dragon Princess was right before his eyes, how could he hold back his emotions any longer? Dou Yue raised a hand to conjure up a silver light barrier that stopped Tang Wulin cold in his tracks. The two of them looked into each other's eyes with the light barrier between them, and a hint of panic flashed through Dou Yue's eyes at the sight of Tang Wulin's scorching gaze. You shouldn't have come here. Why? Tang Wulin was asking Dou Yue two questions at once. Why shouldn't I have come here? And why won't you let me get close to you? Dou Yue replied, can't you see that this is a trap? They've already learned that we were close back at the academy, and that's why they organized this joust for a spouse event. So what? I can't come here just because it's a trap. I'm supposed to just watch as other men fight over you. Dou Yue said, you are the Tang sect master. You represent far more than just yourself and have many more responsibilities on your shoulders. Tang Wulin replied, I do indeed have many responsibilities, but you are the most important out of all of them. If I can't even protect you, then what's the point of continuing to cultivate and become more powerful? I haven't reached the true pinnacle of this world yet, but can't we face whatever problems you have together? Are you still unwilling to tell me exactly what it is that's been troubling you all this time? Dou Yue was at a slight loss as she looked into Tang Wulin's scorching eyes. This was the first time Tang Wulin had ever been so intense and aggressive toward her, and it was both familiar yet also quite alien to her. The two of them continued to look into each other's eyes, and Dou Yue simply didn't know what to say. All of a sudden, Tang Wulin took a step forward and forced himself into the silver light barrier that stood in his way, and Dou Yue reflexively took a step backward in response. Tang Wulin took another determined step forward, yet he didn't release any soul power as he was confident that Dou Yue wouldn't hurt him. Dou Yue heaved a faint sigh as the silver light barrier faded, and she was instantly enveloped in a scorching embrace. Tang Wulin held her with all his might, as if he were trying to fuse their bodies together, and Dou Yue closed her eyes with a complex look on her face. Nothing could compare with the feeling of being embraced by him. What had she done to deserve this? Dou Yue heaved an internal sigh, and tears began to well up in her eyes. Regardless of how strong she appeared before others, she couldn't maintain her facade in his presence. She returned his tight embrace, and much to Tang Wulin's surprise, she was holding him with more power than he was holding her. In this instant, he could sense that beneath her cold facade, Dou Yue's emotional fluctuations were as violent as a volcanic eruption. Just as he was about to say something, her voice rang out once again. You can only truly be happy if you forget me. Immediately thereafter, she disintegrated into specks of silver light within his embrace. Dou Yue. Tang Wulin yelled as he tried to grab onto her, but his efforts proved to be completely futile. He stared at the spot where she had been standing just a moment ago, and his aura began to fluctuate violently. His ability to think clearly and objectively had been completely thrown out the window. From what she had said and the reaction she had displayed toward him, it was clear that she couldn't resist him, but she was trying to resist with all her might. And what did she mean with that parting sentence? After a while, Tang Wulin was able to regulate his own breathing and slowly calm down again. She still wasn't willing to tell him what she was facing, so it had to be something extremely complicated. In any case, happiness was something that one had to fight for and strive toward, so he definitely wasn't going to allow Dou Yue to get away. As his hands balled up into tight fists, a determined look appeared in his eyes. Chapter 1483. The first day of the elimination stage of the joust for a spouse had finally arrived. Over half of the field had been culled by the examinations, but all of the participants had benefited to a certain extent from the myriad beast plane. As such, even those who had been eliminated still had improved impressions of the Spirit Pagoda. In the eyes of most soul masters, the Spirit Pagoda was an extremely revered organization, but was also a vampire that would suck you dry. Its soul spirits and spirit ascension plane were simply inaccessible for most low-grade and mid-grade soul masters due to their prices. But all of the participants in this event were at or above rank 60 in soul power, and at that level, it was rare to find a poor soul master. The society and the federation was a very realistic and stable one in that one's cultivation rank directly corresponded with their status and income. The more powerful someone was, the higher they'd be able to climb up the social ladder. The myriad beast plane had undoubtedly attracted a lot of attention, and its ability to enhance one's soul spirits with no upper limit gave many soul masters hope. As such, very few of the soul masters who had been eliminated immediately left Bright City. All of them were very curious to see what type of prizes the Spirit Pagoda was going to offer. Due to the revelation presented by the myriad beast plane, the spotlight on Silver Dragon Princess Dou Yue was lessened significantly. After all, only a single person would be able to win her heart as the ultimate prize, so there was virtually no chance for anyone below the titled Douluo level, considering only the final 10 would receive the opportunity to be chosen by Dou Yue. There were 4 rounds of elimination matches, and in contrast with the round robin matches, the elimination stage was actually definitely going to be more intense, as one would receive different prizes with each round that they progressed past. With the alluring prizes offered by the Spirit Pagoda, who wouldn't want to advance further in the event? The myriad beast plane had given everyone a taste of what the Spirit Pagoda had to offer, and they were all eager for more. The first round of elimination matches had the most participants, so it would take place over 5 days. Tang Wulin wasn't competing today, but he was in the spectator stands, and his ticket had naturally been organized by the Tang sect. As he sat in his seat, he thought back to the participant information he had read in the past. Not only had this joust for a spouse event attracted the elite prodigies of the younger generation, there were also some unexpected participants. According to the rules of the event, those above rank 60 in soul power and below 35 years of age were eligible, but the age limit was raised 5 years for additional 10 ranks of soul power. This meant that the age limit actually ranged up to 50 for those who were at or above the titled Douluo level. For some prodigiously talented soul masters, 50 was already quite an advanced age. As such, on the list of participants prepared for him by the Tang sect, there were not only titled Douluos, but even hyper Douluos who were in their 40s. For soul masters, 40 was still quite a young age, particularly for those who were at the titled Douluo level or above. Titled Douluos in their 40s were in the primes of their lives, and they could expect rapid progress in their cultivation at that age range. All soul masters who could reach the titled Douluo level before turning 50 were considered to be supremely talented, and Tang Wulin was going to have to face more competition than he originally anticipated. Of course, he wasn't the only one that this applied to. Over 1,600 participants had reached the elimination stage, which meant that over 800 matches had to take place, even over the span of 5 days. That amounted to over 160 matches per day. For the elimination stage, 10 competition platforms had been prepared in the Bright City Sports Stadium. This could only work in the Bright City Sports Stadium, which was the largest sports stadium in the entire federation. No other sports stadium would have such a massive space. Each competition platform had side lengths of over 100 meters and were fitted with protective barriers of the highest caliber. The rules had already been announced. There were no rules. The Spirit Pagoda believed that everything, including weapons, soul tools, and mechas, were a part of one's power and could be freely used without any restrictions. The only objective was to defeat the opponent. The competition platforms were quite spacious for soul master battles, but they were actually too small for mechas to be able to maneuver themselves properly. However, this was inevitable due to the constraints of the venue, and the participants would just have to adapt and make do. At this point, the soul masters participating in the first round of the elimination stage had already entered the venue. Tang Wulin cast his gaze toward the 6th competition platform, atop which stood a pair of participants. One of them was an extremely imposing man with his arms bared to reveal his bronze skin, and they were so muscular that they were as thick as the legs of a normal person. His short red hair stood up like steel pins, and he was giving off a very intimidating aura. His name was Qi Shanming, and his martial soul was fire elemental control. Apparently, his house was set alight as soon as he was born, and he possessed innate full soul power. He was currently 37 years of age and a rank 91 titled Douluo. His style of battle was extremely explosive and aggressive, and his Douluo title was Flame Tyrant. He was renowned for his ferocious offensive prowess and would often crush his opponents with his overwhelming offensive capabilities. Standing before him was an ordinary-looking young man who appeared to be around 27 to 28 years of age without any notable features. Qi Shanming was the most powerful being in this first of over 10 groups of battles that were to take place on this day. Not only had this match attracted Tang Wulin's attention, many other spectators were also eagerly awaiting its commencement. It was always a pleasure to be able to witness a titled Douluo in action. Qi Shanming's opponent was named Yuan Hui, and aside from the fact that he possessed rank 83 soul power, not much more information about him was available. Only Tang Wulin knew who this Yuan Hui was, and he couldn't help but lament Qi Shanming's ill fortune. That's right, this Yuan Hui was none other than the alias of Yuan and Yui. All of Shrek's 7 monsters were participating in this event, and Yuan and Yui had a very ordinary appearance to begin with in her male attire, and this was even further exacerbated by her disguise. Many of the spectators were guessing at how long this match would last. In their eyes, the outcome outcome was already set in stone. There was simply an insurmountable gap between titled Douluos and Soul Douluos, and everyone knew that a Soul Master would undergo an evolution after reaching the titled Douluo level that would take them to the true pinnacle of the Soul Master world. However, a Soul Douluo was already very powerful, and they were only hoping that Yuan Hui would be able to last for some time in the face of Qi Shanling's attacks. Due to the high number of matches that were to take place, there would be no commentary during the elimination stage. After a short electronic countdown, the matches officially commenced. Over 80% of the spectators had their attention focused on the sixth competition platform, eagerly awaiting the performance of a titled Douluo. Despite the spectators' confidence in him, Qi Shanling wasn't allowing any complacency to take hold. In fact, he wasn't even confident in the notion that he would definitely secure victory. Having become a titled Douluo before turning 40, he had endured countless battles, and as soon as he saw Yuan Hui, he immediately knew that something was off about this Yuan Hui. Why? It was because he was simply far too ordinary and devoid of noteworthy traits. What was most unsettling to him was that he couldn't sense any energy fluctuations from his opponent. He had done some research into his opponent, and he was very confident in his own powers, but he definitely wasn't going to get careless. On top of that, he was participating in this event not for Guyuna, nor for any of the prizes. He was simply here to test himself and further improve through battle. Chapter 1484. Ever since he had become a titled Douluo, his rate of progression had tapered off significantly. He was still working very hard in his cultivation, but his progression had slowed to a crawl. He knew that he needed to accumulate more experience in order to continue to improve, and the best way to do this was undoubtedly through battle. This was only the first match, yet he had already encountered such a dangerous Soul Douluo, and this was causing his battle intent to escalate through the roof. He would much rather face a powerful opponent than have an easy match, as the more powerful his opponent was, the more he'd be able to improve by battling them. 3, 2, 1, begin. As the electronic voice announced the commencement of the matches, protective light barriers instantly rose up around all of the competition platforms. Qi Shanling immediately took the initiative and lunged forward. In his experience, nothing was more important than offense and momentum. Offense was the best defense and was also the key to victory. He didn't unleash any soul skills and didn't even release his martial soul, choosing instead to propel himself forward like a cannonball with brute strength alone. However, upon closer inspection, one would discover that his skin had turned slightly red, and he was giving off a scorching aura. He was like a soul missile that had just been launched out of the barrel. In the instant that emerged from the barrel, it instantly began to heat up while continuing to accelerate. The closer he got to Yuan Hui, the redder his skin became, and his aura was only becoming more and more fearsome. In contrast, Yuan Hui remained completely still in the spot, as if he had been scared witless. Did he have a death wish? The referee may not be able to intervene in time to save him. All of the spectators looked on with wide, astonished eyes, and they discovered that Yuan Hui seemed to have been immobilized on the spot. Qi Shanling was also quite perplexed by this, and he began to hold back a little in his forward charge in order to keep his options open. In his experience, there was only one possible explanation for this. His opponent's forte was speed, and he was confident in evading the attack at the last second. However, Qi Shanling was unconvinced. He was a very burly and powerful man, but that didn't mean that speed was a weakness for him. The two of them drew closer and closer, and Qi Shanling was beginning to anticipate when his opponent was going to evade. There were 10 meters left, 5 meters. 3 meters. Why was he still not dodging? Did he think that he still had time? Qi Shanling was feeling very slighted by what he perceived to be sheer arrogance from his opponent, and a hint of fury flashed through his eyes. All of a sudden, a burst of scorching red flames erupted from behind him, and his speed was instantly accelerated by threefold, allowing him to cover the remaining 3 meters in the blink of an eye. Boom. All of the spectators were also anticipating that Qi Shanling's opponent would dodge, but much to their surprise, Yuan Hui continued to remain still on the spot. In the instant that the two of them flashed, a burst of reddish golden flames erupted like the explosion of a soul missile. The scene was filled with a sense of brutal artistry, and all of the spectators felt bursts of adrenaline coursing through their veins. Qi Shanling had claimed the victory with a single attack. Instead of erupting into cheers, the spectators were quite disappointed to see this. They were hoping to watch a spectacular match, not a one-sided victory like this. Such a crushing victory presented quite an exhilarating spectacle, but it was simply far too short. A faint smile appeared on Tang Wulin's face, and there was no concern whatsoever in his eyes. So what if this Qi Shanling was a titled Douluo? There was no way he would be able to defeat Yuan Hui so easily. The flames subsided, and the spectators finally managed to see what was happening on the competition platform. Much to everyone's astonishment, Yuan Hui was still standing on the spot, and all he had done was raise a single hand. However, the hand had stopped Qi Shanling's fist hold in its tracks. Qi Shanling was a mountain of muscle that was over 2 meters tall, while Yuan Hui was a thin and frail young man who wasn't even 170 centimeters tall. Even at a conservative estimate, Qi Shanling had to weigh at least twice as much as him, yet Yuan Hui was standing before him like an immovable brick wall. Qi Shanling's eyes were currently filled with astonishment. Never did he think that this would be the outcome. In the instant that his fist had struck Yuan Hui's outstretched right hand, he had thought that his flames and enormous strength would overwhelm his opponent even before the referee had a chance to step in. However, when the clash actually took place, things didn't go as he expected. Qi Shanling felt as if his fist had struck an indestructible mountain. All of his strength and fire elemental power was smothered by the mountain, and he was completely stopped in his tracks. How was this possible? This didn't make any sense. Qi Shanling had a vast wealth of battle experience, but he had never encountered a situation like this before. It was downright preposterous to think that someone could be this strong. However, Qi Shanling only paused for a brief moment before he returned to his senses and stepped forward with his left foot. At the same time, a layer of reddish golden flames erupted from his body alongside 9 soul rings. A fiery figure that was virtually identical to him in size and form also rose up behind him. This fiery figure was of a reddish golden color, and it crashed into Qi Shanling's body as soon as it appeared. As a result, his body instantly turned a reddish golden color as well, and scorching flames swept toward Yuan Hui in an inescapable wave. As a titled Douluo with fire elemental control as his martial soul, the temperature of his flames was extremely fearsome, and these flames were the basis of all of his soul skills. His opponent's incredible defense hadn't shaken his unwavering confidence. Right at this moment, Yuan Hui also sprang into action. Instead of retreating or taking evasive measures, she took a small step forward before violently thrusting her right hand toward her opponent's fist. All of a sudden, the air currents around Qi Shanling began to swell. His flames were caught in a vortex that was expanding in all directions. Furthermore, there was a strange type of repulsive force being released by his opponent's hand, making it impossible for his flames to converge. What was even more astonishing was the enormous force being exerted by his opponent's right hand. The force was too powerful for him to resist, and he immediately tried to withdraw his right fist. At the same time, the flame spirit that had just fused into his body erupted forth before hurtling directly toward Yuan Hui in a fiery embrace. The flame spirit was one of his soul spirits and one of the most important constituents of his combat prowess. The most fearsome trait of elemental control soul masters lay in the unpredictability and versatility of their attacks as they weren't bound by the same restrictions as normal soul masters. Qi Shanling had reacted very appropriately to the situation, but unfortunately for him, he was facing one of Shrek's 7 monsters, Yuan Hui. All of a sudden, Qi Shanling caught a glimpse of Yuan Hui's eyes. Even his scorching flames were unable to outshine the light in those scintillating yellow eyes. It was also at this moment that a burst of yellow erupted from her body, which kept all of the scorching reddish golden flames at bay. Chapter 1485. The yellow light proliferated outward in the form of a vortex, completely rejecting Qi Shanling's flames, yet his right fist was caught in a vice-like grip, rendering him unable to withdraw it. In the next instant, the terrifying yellow light completely erupted. Yuan Hui stepped forward with her left foot, and 8 soul rings rose up around her. There was no thunderous roar or eruption of aura. She did nothing more than thrust her right hand forward. Earth was very effective for suppressing fire, so Yuan Hui's Titan Giant Ape martial soul had extremely potent fire resistance. On top of that, she was a pure strength type soul master whose forte lay in melee combat. Her terrifying strength was her forte, and this was something no one expected, considering her thin and frail-looking body. Qi Shanling's flames began to burn with even greater intensity, but his right fist was forced all the way back to his chest by Yuan Hui's hand. Not only was she able to attack using her divine cloud vortex fists, she was also able to release powerful repulsive force to repel her enemy's power while using the internal vortex to gather her own power. Tang Wulin was constantly improving, and his friends were also following in his footsteps. The terrifying explosive power erupted in this instant, and a giant projection appeared behind Yuan Hui before vanishing in a flash. Boom. The flame spirit was completely dispersed, and Qi Shanming felt as if a massive pillar had struck him square in the chest. A burst of sharp pain speared through his sternum, and he reflexively released his suit of battle armor to protect himself. Even though he was already a titled Douluo, he still didn't have enough soul-refined metal for a suit of 3-word battle armor, so his battle armor was still only at the 2-word level. In this dire situation, the battle armor had been automatically released to protect its wearer. However, Yuan and Yui wasn't going to give him a chance to stage a comeback. She abruptly drew back her right hand, pulling Qi Shanming toward her, then lowered her shoulder before ramming it directly toward Qi Shanming's chest. At the same time, she clenched her right fist, unleashed her divine cloud vortex fist down toward the ground below. In the instant that Qi Shanming had released his suit of battle armor, his 7th soul ring had also lit up to unleash his fire elemental true body. Once his body transformed into fire elements, the effect of physical attacks had on him would be very limited. However, as he unleashed his 7th soul skill, violent tremors suddenly erupted from underfoot, and his soul skill was abruptly cut off by a burst of fearsome rotational power. Impossible. He can cut off my 7th soul skill? Qi Shanming was astonished by this sudden turn of events. Right at this moment, Yuan and Yui's shoulder struck his fiery chest in a vicious blow. Bam! Qi Shanming felt as if all of his bones had been shattered, and blood instantly began to flow out of all of his orifices. The crisp crack of shattering bones rang out, and both his sternum and the bones in his right arm were broken by the impact. Only then did Yuan and Yui release his right hand, then encircled her arms before her to release a burst of powerful suction force, controlling Qi Shanming's body in flames and confining them within a certain area. In the next instant, she lashed out with both of her fists in unison. At this point, Qi Shanming had finally donned his suit of 2-word battle armor, which was immediately struck by Yuan and Yui's fists. Boom! Qi Shanming transformed into a fiery missile once again, except he was flying backward on this occasion. His body crashed into the protective barrier in the distance with a resounding boom, and after falling to the ground, he spasmed uncontrollably, unable to get up again. The attack hadn't been enough to kill him, but there was definitely no way he would be able to continue in this battle. As Yuan and Yui had unleashed those 2 punches, a pair of translucent yellow gauntlets had appeared on her fists. After her opponent was sent flying, the gauntlets were also withdrawn in a very smooth and flowing sequence. The victory goes to Yuan Hui. The referee announced after a brief hesitation. Yuan and Yui didn't even take an extra glance at her opponent before departing from the platform. There was no exuberant celebration. It was as if she had done something completely unremarkable and mundane. Only after her departure did the entire stadium erupt into chatter. Who could have imagined that a titled Douluo would be eliminated in such crushing fashion on the very first day? This was simply incredible. The entire battle was extremely short, and Qi Shanming didn't even get a chance to unleash his most powerful soul skills before he was defeated. How was this possible? Of course, some of the more seasoned powerful beings present were able to identify what had happened. It was generally considered to be quite shameful for a titled Douluo to lose to a soul Douluo, but this also depended on the caliber of the soul Douluo. If Qi Shanming were an elite soul master, then his opponent had to be a prodigy, and a super prodigy. At that, Qi Shanming had lost primarily because he had subconsciously underestimated his opponent. Due to the fact that his opponent was a soul Douluo, he had made the grave error of launching an all-out attack without testing his opponent first. As a result, he completely exposed himself and was at the mercy of his opponent. With his fire elemental control martial soul, he definitely wouldn't have lost in such crushing fashion had he chosen to attack from long range. At the very least, he would have been able to perform to the best of his abilities. However, he had chosen melee combat, which played right into the hands of his opponent. Even the seasoned powerful beings in the spectator stands didn't manage to identify what Yuan and Yui's martial soul was before the match concluded. Everything had happened far too quickly, and Qi Shanming had been dominated from start to finish. As Qi Shanming was helped up from the ground by the referee, everyone was given a glimpse of his cuirass, which had caved in significantly. There was still blood constantly pouring out of his nose and mouth, clearly indicating that he had suffered severe internal injuries. Even now, Qi Shanming felt as if he were in a dream. As his opponent's fists had struck his chest, he clearly sensed that the defenses of his suit of 2-word battle armor had been instantly broken. On top of that, his opponent's fists had been imbued with terrifying rotational power that had broken through his defenses and could have easily torn his entire body apart. The only reason he was still alive right now was because his opponent had spared his life. This was a man who had mastered fist intent, and perhaps even attained fist soul. Choosing to engage in melee combat with such an opponent was akin to committing suicide. Tang Wulin stood up in the spectator stands with a smile on his face. There were no other matches that he was interested in watching on this day. Yuan and Yui had become even more formidable. Even though she was only at rank 83 soul power, she had the most potent soul power among all of Shrek's 7 monsters aside from Tang Wulin. Most importantly, she had attained an even higher level of mastery of her divine cloud vortex fists, and it seemed that she had benefited immensely from hearing Tang Wulin's description of the Titan Giant Ape's divine Titan fists. In a one-on-one battle where soul skills were prohibited, even he would most likely have some trouble defeating her. In his absence, she was the pillar that supported Shrek's 7 monsters. Such a stunning occurrence in the first group of matches had sent the entire sports stadium into a frenzy. It was incredible that such a powerful titled Douluo had been defeated just like that. As a result, Yuan Hui instantly became one of the favorites of the entire Joust for a Spouse event, and all major media outlets were replaying his match with expert commentators attempting to dissect and explain what had happened. During their analysis, they quickly discovered that he had revealed extremely little about his abilities during the battle. The gauntlets that he had used were identified to have most likely been components of suit of 3-word battle armor, which was why they had been so destructive. It had also been deduced that he most likely possessed an earth attribute pure strength type martial soul, but overall, this was still very little information. No one wanted to encounter such an opponent in an elimination match. The overall evaluation was that Yuan Hui's powers were at the titled Douluo level, and that it was very likely that he was a 3-word battle armor master. At the very least, the gauntlets for his suit of 3-word battle armor had been completed. Chapter 1486. People were already beginning to investigate Yuan Hui's origins. In particular, the Spirit Pagoda was very quick to investigate the unknown 3-word battle armor masters. According to the results of the investigation, Yuan Hui was from the military. As powerful as the Spirit Pagoda was, even they couldn't know everything about every branch of the military, and they didn't dare to investigate any further. Soul beasts had been gradually pushed toward extinction due to the rapid advancement of technology, and even the most powerful soul master in the world, the Atlas Douluo, had fallen to a pair of Godslayer missiles. As such, the Spirit Pagoda knew that they definitely couldn't stand against the military. The elimination matches were very cruel, and after the first day, close to 100 participants had already been eliminated. Practical combat was undoubtedly the best way to examine a soul master's overall abilities, and some of the matches between more evenly matched opponents had been extremely intense. This was an opportunity for everyone to display their own powers, so all of the participants were fighting with all their might, and injuries were a very common sight. Thankfully, the intervention of the referees and the self-restraint of the participants ensured that there were no deaths. All of the major media outlets had broadcasted the important matches that took place on the first day, including the peak showdown between Qi Shanming and Yuan and Yui. Following the commencement of the elimination matches, the Joust for a Spouse event became even more popular, and some favorites had already begun to emerge. The most unexpected outcome on the first day was the elimination of Qi Shanming, which served to prove that the Soul Master world was filled with hidden powerful beings. Tang Wulin's match was scheduled for the third day of the first round. Due to his exceptional performance in the examinations and the fact that he was a titled Douluo from the Blue Lightning Current Dragon clan, his match also received widespread attention. His opponent was a Soul Douluo, so everyone was speculating about whether this Soul Douluo would be able to create a miracle as Yuan Hui had on the first day and defeat the heavy favorite that was Tang Wulin. After stepping onto the competition platform, Tang Wulin was greeted by the sight of his opponent. This was a Soul Master who appeared to be around 30 years of age with a medium build, but very wide shoulders. He stood firmly on the spot like a stone block, and his eyes weren't very big, but they were very bright and piercing. He was appraising Tang Wulin with an intense gaze, and he remained completely expressionless. The attention of the spectators was almost unanimously drawn to this match. During the past matches, they had discovered that battles between Soul Masters of a high caliber tended to end more quickly. This was either due to a large disparity in power or due to victories being sealed by sudden and explosive displays of power. In contrast, the more prolonged and grueling matches tended to take place between Soul Emperors. Up to this point, no Mechas had appeared during any of the matches, clearly because they were too clumsy and maladroit. On the rostrum, Fuyuna was seated beside Kyangi's Hanting. Spirit Pagoda Chairman Kyangi Dawnfang wasn't in attendance as this was only the elimination stage. Nana, who do you think will win this match? Kayang Yu's Hangting asked with a smile. Gu Yuna replied in an indifferent manner. There shouldn't be much doubt about the outcome considering the clear cultivation rank disparity. Kayang Yu's Hangting asked, so you think that Oolong Yu will emerge victorious? Don't forget about what happened to Qi Shanding on the first day. He's one of the most powerful backup battle gods of the Battle God Hall, yet even he lost to a Soul Douluo. If you ask me, anything is possible. Isn't the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon only good at controlling lightning? Gu Yuna asked, are you testing me on purpose? How can fire elemental control compare with the martial soul of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon's caliber? Even in the Dragon Clan, Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragons are very powerful beings. Not only are they adept at controlling lightning, they've inherited the immense strength and speed of the Dragon Clan as well. Even as far back as 20,000 years ago, this ancient family was extremely powerful and was one of the 6 founding clans of the Spirit Hall. After that, they gradually faded from the public eye, but there was even a Sea God's Pavilion Master that arose from the clan in the past. On top of that, records state that the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Martial Soul has the potential to evolve into the Holy Radiant Dragon Martial Soul. Oolong Yu is already a titled Douluo at such a young age. Who's to say he won't have a second Martial Soul awakening? Kayang Yu's Hangting gave Gu Yuna a thumbs up and praised, as expected of a high-achieving student from Shrek Academy. You know all this like the back of your own hand. You're right. I also think Oolong Yu has better chances in this match. But from what I've heard, his opponent is no slouch either. He may only be a Soul Douluo, but if you ask me, he may not be inferior to that Yuan Hui. Oh, do you know him? Gu Yuna asked with an intrigued expression. I do. He's from our Spirit Pagoda, and he's one of the supervisors at the Advanced Spirit Ascension Plane. He's participating in this event solely for training purposes, and his name is Wichang. He has a very special martial soul, and his nickname is Door of Summoning. You'll see what I mean once the match begins. If that Oolong Yu gets careless, he could easily lose this match. Door of Summoning. Gu Yuna was rather surprised to hear this. Kayang Yu's Hangting nodded with a mysterious smile. Just watch. I won't spoil any more of this for you. As for that Oolong Yu, even if he wins this match, if he encounters me later on, even if he's a dragon, he'll have to submit to my coiling dragon staff martial soul. Then what about me? Gu Yuna asked with a roll of her eyes. Kayang Yu's Hangting hurriedly put on a fawning smile and said, it's different for you, of course. You'll also be coiled, but you'll be coiled around me, and I'll have to do whatever you say. That's more like it. Gu Yuna smiled as a hint of purple light flashed deep within her eyes. Kayang Yu's Hangting faltered slightly at the side of her, and a hint of purple light also flashed through his eyes. 3, 2, 1, begin. Tang Wulin's match commenced with the announcement from the electronic voice. Door of Summoning Wichang. Tang Wulin had already received information regarding this opponent in advance, and he was definitely a very interesting character. As such, Tang Wulin wasn't in a hurry to win the battle as he was very interested in Wichang's martial soul. Wichang immediately released his martial soul and battle armor from the get-go. Specks of light appeared over his body, starting from the 2 sides of his collarbone, then slowly spread to his shoulders before trailing down his arms. At the same time, specks of light also emerged from his hips down to his legs. It was as if a pair of door characters had appeared on his body. Furthermore, his battle armor was also quite peculiar. The entire suit of battle armor was flat and planar in shape, completely different from the 3-dimensional quality that was usually present in suits of battle armor. This strange shape struck the beholder with the impression that each and every piece of his suit of battle armor was giving off a faint sheen. On his back was a pair of folded mechanical wings, and there were even propellers attached to them, sending him flying backward with an eruption of soul power. At the same time, 8 soul rings appeared around him, every single one of which was black, presenting an incredible sight to behold. Chapter 1487. A stir immediately ran through the spectators at the sight of these 8 soul rings, and they became even more eager to watch this match unfold. Everyone wanted to see an evenly matched battle between powerful beings, and they were especially interested to see if this Soul Douluo could upset Oolong Yu. Tang Wulin remained standing on the spot as lightning began to flash around his body, but he didn't attack right away. Wichang was quite elated to see this. The main trait of his martial soul was that the longer the battle dragged on, the more powerful it became. His first soul ring flashed, and an inky black door of light appeared right in front of him. A low roar rang out from within the door of light immediately following which a giant black wolf emerged from within. The wolf was over 6 meters in length and was extremely tall with exaggerated, almost cartoonish muscles bulging all over its body. Its fur gave off a glossy sheen, and it was very apparent that it possessed immense explosive power. After the giant wolf emerged, it didn't immediately attack Tang Wulin. Instead, it sprang off to the side and began to slowly circle around Tang Wulin, but its vicious eyes were fixed on his body the entire time, looking as if it could pounce at any moment. After summoning this giant wolf, Wichang was instilled with a lot of confidence, and his second and third soul rings also lit up as 2 more doors of light appeared beside the first one. Immediately thereafter, 2 more identical giant wolves emerged, and they also began to stalk around Tang Wulin without immediately attacking him. The 3 giant wolves formed a triangular formation with Tang Wulin at their center, letting loose strings of menacing snarls. All of a sudden, a burst of chanting rang out. Wichang didn't know why Tang Wulin was adopting such a passive approach, but this played right into his hands. His 7th soul ring lit up as he continued to chant his incantation, and at the same time, a series of golden lines began to spread from beneath his feet, forming a formation with a diameter of over 10 meters. Tang Wulin's eyes narrowed slightly, and he could sense that the sound waves released by Wichang's chanting were resonating with one another in a special way. These resonating sound waves surged through the air, and they seemed to be calling out for something. Wichang was watching Tang Wulin this entire time while he chanted his incantation, constantly preparing for a sudden attack from Tang Wulin. However, Tang Wulin merely gestured for him to continue with a proud look on his face, displaying no intention to attack at all. A cold look appeared in Wichang's eyes, and he was determined to make his opponent pay for his arrogance. Even though he was only a Soul Douluo, given sufficient time, he would be able to display title Douluo level power, and his opponent would sorely regret underestimating him. At the same time, he was elated by this opportunity. Under these circumstances, he would be able to display 120% of his true power. Howl. All of a sudden, the 3 giant wolves that had already been summoned began to howl in unison, and the formation beneath Wichang's feet instantly underwent a transformation as a ferocious roar that was filled with boundless might and authority rang out from within it. At the center of the formation, a massive wolf's head with a diameter of over 5 meters slowly emerged. Wichang's face had turned very pale, but his eyes were filled with glee and triumph. The 3 giant wolves he had summoned were his first 3 soul skills. Generally speaking, no soul master would possess 3 of the same soul skill, but this didn't apply to him due to the special nature of his martial soul. On the Douluo continent, a martial soul could be anything. It could be a pickaxe, it could be a cup, and of course, it could be a door. When Wichang awakened his martial soul at 6 years of age, it was discovered to be a door, which was a trash martial soul in everyone's eyes. However, at the same time, he had been blessed with an 8th rank soul power. It was exactly because of this that he embarked on the path of cultivation as a soul master. Thankfully, his family was quite affluent, and with an 8th rank soul power, he could be considered as a prodigy. Even though no one knew what his door would be capable of, his family still enrolled him into a soul master academy. After entering the academy, Wichang was often bullied as his martial soul wasn't able to do anything. Even Wichang himself was beginning to fall into despair. That was until he reached rank 10 in soul power and attained his first soul spirit. At the time, no one knew what type of soul ring and soul spirit should be fused with his martial soul, so they could only make a blind guess. After extensive discussion, his family didn't dare to give him too powerful a soul spirit, but they didn't want to settle for anything too weak either. In the end, they chose a demonic wolf. This was only a mid-range soul spirit among 100-year-old soul spirits, but to everyone's surprise, changes began to take place after Wichang fused with this soul spirit. When he opened that door again, the soul spirit emerged to assist him in battle. At the time, his family hadn't thought anything of this as all soul masters were able to summon their soul spirits. However, they quickly discovered that this was something different. The soul spirit released from the door of summoning possessed all of the demonic wolf skills and abilities, whereas normal soul spirits would only be able to retain one of their soul skills. Normal soul spirits could only battle for a limited time and would severely deplete the soul master's soul power and spiritual power. But not only was this soul spirit not bound by such limitations, it was made even more powerful by the door of summoning. As Wichang continued to progress in his cultivation, the power of the soul spirit being released by his door of summoning was also becoming more powerful, and even his soul rings were slowly being upgraded. His family had close ties with the Spirit Pagoda, and they introduced this strange martial soul of his to the Spirit Pagoda for guidance. With over 10,000 years of accumulated knowledge and experience, the Spirit Pagoda really was able to find a suitable cultivation method for him. His martial soul was known as the door of summoning, and it could directly summon soul beasts through his soul rings. If they were pure soul rings, then the summoned beasts would become even more powerful, powerful, and at his peak, he would be able to summon 9 soul beasts to assist him in battle with his 9 soul rings. However, soul beasts were on the brink of extinction, so he could only choose soul spirits, thereby necessitating a change in his cultivation method. He appeared to have summoned 3 demonic wolves with his first 3 soul rings, but they were actually all from a single soul spirit. Through this special cultivation method, he was able to create a type of resonance between himself and the 3 demonic wolves, thereby allowing him to open up a passageway through which they could summon their brethren. Only after he became a soul sage was this type of summoning method fully established, and it granted him immense combat prowess. At this moment, he had combined the 3 demonic wolves and his martial soul true body to summon the wolf emperor, which was a 100,000-year-old demonic wolf. This wasn't a 100,000-year-old soul spirit, it was a complete 100,000-year-old soul beast. As the giant wolf head slowly emerged, a peculiar feeling suddenly welled up in Tang Wulin's heart. This type of summoning seemed to have evoked resonance between this plane and another plane, which meant that this 100,000-year-old soul beast had to actually exist in some alternate plane. Chapter 1488. In the past, he would have been astonished by this, but following his ordeal in the myriad beast plane, he could sense that this type of summoning had something to do with the myriad beast plane. Soul beasts hadn't actually gone extinct. At the very least, a small portion of them resided in the myriad beast plane, and there was no lack of powerful beings among them. If all of these soul beasts were being raised by the spirit pagoda in the enclosure that was the myriad beast plane, then the spirit pagoda would truly be a terrifying organization. 3 streaks of light flashed, and the first 3 giant wolves instantly fused into the formation as streaks of black light. Immediately thereafter, a massive wolf that was over 10 meters in length emerged from the formation amid a thunderous roar. This wolf's fur was also inky black, but each and every strand of it gave off a crystalline appearance. It crouched down slightly, and an incredibly powerful aura immediately erupted from his body. A series of black halos proliferated outward from beneath its paws, leaving a series of demonic patterns on the ground. This was a domain. A 100,000-year-old wolf emperor that possessed a domain was undoubtedly going to be more powerful than a normal 100,000-year-old soul beast. The entire competition platform only had side lengths of 100 meters, so the emergence of such a gigantic wolf instantly made the available space on the platform very limited, leaving not much room for evasion. Could it be that another titled Douluo was going to be upset? All of the spectators looked on in a flabbergasted manner. In their eyes, the proud display being put on by Douluo was one of unfounded arrogance. What the hell was he doing? Did he have a death wish? Our Wei was standing above the wolf emperor's head with his 8 inky black soul rings shimmering around him, giving him an invincible, overbearing appearance. He looked down at Tang Wulin with a smug look in his eyes, and he was finally going to make Tang Wulin pay for his arrogance. Howl. The wolf emperor howled, and all of its fur stood up on end like a series of black crystalline spears, following which it pounced directly toward Tang Wulin. The attack was very simple, but due to the restricted area, there wasn't much space for Tang Wulin to take evasive measures. The black domain beneath the wolf emperor's paws quickly spread, and a series of inky black runes rose up from within it. The wolf emperor's domain was known as haunting of vengeful spirits. All of the living beings slain by the wolf emperor would become a part of its domain, and they would rise up as vengeful spirits to attack the wolf emperor's enemies while also enhancing its powers at the same time. Right at this moment, Tang Wulin suddenly let loose a thunderous dragon's roar, and arcs of blue lightning began to appear over his body, forming a bluish golden light barrier. The wolf emperor clearly folded momentarily in midair, and what was even more peculiar was that as soon as the lightning appeared, the wolf emperor's domain parted as if it had been struck by an invisible force. Tang Wulin stepped forward with his left foot, then launched his right fist forward. Lightning coursed over his arm, following which bolts of lightning erupted out of his body in a frenzy. Each and every bolt of lightning was like a ferocious giant python, and the vengeful spirits that didn't have enough time to evade were all instantly destroyed amid blood-curdling cries. Boom, 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 boom. Lightning filled the entire platform right before the astonished eyes of all of the spectators. That's right, the entirety of the competition platform had been instantly filled with lightning, and even the powerful protective barrier around it seemed to be on the verge of collapse. Our Wei and the wolf emperor had been completely inundated in the terrifying world of lightning, making it impossible for the spectators to see them. Even the other 9 competition platforms were illuminated by the scintillating lightning, and all of the competing participants couldn't help but turn their attention toward the spectacle. Good heavens! What was going on over there? On the rostrum, Kyangyu's Hanting's calm facade was instantly shattered, and he abruptly rose to his feet as an astonished look appeared on his face. With side lengths of 100 meters, the competition platform had an area of 10,000 square meters, yet all of it had been filled with lightning without even the slightest gap to be seen. Just a moment ago, he had thought that he would be watching an upset victory, but now, there were chills running down his spine. Douluo appeared to be very arrogant, but it seemed that he had what it took to back up his own arrogance. This was a truly incredible display of power. How much soul power would it require to unleash an attack that covered such a large area? Would the wolf emperor be able to withstand such an attack? The lightning gradually subsided, and as everything became clearer, the spectators discovered that the wolf emperor was still alive and well. However, their expressions quickly changed drastically as they discovered that the wolf emperor had slumped down onto the ground. There was still someone standing on its back, but it was now Tang Wulin instead of Our Wei. Our Wei was laying on the wolf's head, spasming uncontrollably. His entire body was completely charred black and unrecognizable at this point, and the wolf emperor was also trembling uncontrollably with its front paws covering its own head. The overbearing wolf emperor was being made to look like a cowardly dog, and it was truly an indescribable sight. All of the spectators were completely flabbergasted, but Tang Wulin merely stood with his hands clasped behind his back as if nothing had ever happened. After that, he casually strolled off the wolf emperor's back before departing from the competition platform, and his victory was declared. During the match, the foreplay had lasted far longer than the climax. Degrees, and Our Wei had been made to look like a complete clown. Douluo had allowed him to take all of the preparatory measures that he pleased, only to crush him like an ant in the end. Guyuna turned to the stunned Kyangyu's Hanting and asked, "Do you still think he'll be an easy opponent now? It looks like he's mastered the true meaning of lightning as opposed to pursuing the path of a second holy radiant dragon awakening. Lightning is the embodiment of righteous energy, so it's no surprise that it was able to nullify the haunting of vengeful spirits, but for him to crush the wolf emperor with a large-scale soul skill indicates that his lightning is extremely powerful." Kyangyu's Hanting nodded in response. He was not some unintelligent buffoon who had nothing but power, and he knew that he had to take this Douluo more seriously. "I'll examine the data to see just how powerful that soul skill was," Kyangyu's Hanting said before hurriedly departing. Guyuna cast her gaze out toward the sports stadium again, but her large, beautiful eyes had already become glazed over and unfocused. Tang Wulin reviewed the match in his mind as he left the competition platform. Our Wei loss had naturally been sealed from the very beginning. With Tang Wulin's power, even the average hyper Douluo may not be a match for him, let alone a mere soul Douluo. As for the wolf emperor, it was indeed a 100,000-year-old soul beast, but wolf emperors were quite ordinary among 100,000-year-old soul beasts, and its domain had been completely dominated by Tang Wulin's infernal lightning vine. On top of that, Tang Wulin had unleashed that roar to release his dragon's might, and the wolf emperor had already been severely intimidated by his golden dragon king bloodline aura. It had only survived as Tang Wulin had held back in his blue emperor myriad lightning hell. After clashing with the titan giant ape and sky azure bull python, he seemed to have attained a deeper level of understanding of lightning, thereby allowing him to use the infernal lightning vine's power more effectively. Of course, there was still room for improvement. Tang Wulin had already ironed out all of the abilities that he currently possessed. The most important thing for him now was to continue to integrate them. Chapter 1489. There had been many integration processes during Tang Wulin's cultivation journey, and this was going to be a brand new one. It was a change that had taken place after he had experienced the elemental tribulations during his heavenly refinement. After achieving heavenly refinement, Tang Wulin discovered that he was no longer just refining the metals, but also himself. The refinement process involved constantly stripping away the impurities while retaining the essence within his own body in order to make himself more powerful. Ordinary soul masters were generally troubled by a lack of soul skills, but the exact opposite was true for Tang Wulin. With his blue silver emperor, golden dragon king bloodline, and 9 hearts of the golden dragon, he had a vast number of skills and abilities. On top of that, he now possessed a domain and powerful soul spirits that provided him with even more soul skills. All in all, he had several dozens of skills at his disposal. With such a massive repertoire, how could he utilize it to perfection during battle? And how many of those skills would he be able to use in a battle? This was something that Tang Wulin had been thinking about about extensively in recent times. As he gradually mastered Millennium White Clouds, an unpredictable storm, he was made even more aware of the fact that having more cell skills wasn't exactly better. The key was to integrate himself with the laws of heaven and earth and resonate with those laws. Only then would he be able to unleash more power. A so-called god was actually just a living being who had mastered the laws of the universe to a certain extent. In other words, any living being who mastered a portion of the laws of the universe could be referred to as a god. The laws that one mastered differed from person to person, and Tang Wulin was undergoing this process of mastery during the elemental tribulations he brought upon himself. Through those tribulations, he was able to grasp the changes in the power of laws and constantly refine his own body. Once he completed this integration process, he would be able to progress to the hyper Douluo level. How did you lose? What did you feel during your match? Yang Yu's Hangting asked. Standing before him was Our Wuchang, and even now, his body was spasming slightly. His injuries had been treated by the healing system soul masters, but his body was still very numb, and with every few steps he took, he would have to stop and allow his body to spasm for a moment before he could continue onward. I'm not sure, Our Wuchang stuttered. At the time, I felt like everything around me had turned into lightning, and I reflexively tried to unleash my other soul skills, but I was already immobilized by then. The Wolf Emperor tried to protect me at the time, but its defenses were instantly destroyed, and I immediately blacked out after that. Yang Yu's Hangting's eyelids twitched upon hearing this, and he really wanted to denounce Our Wuchang as a useless piece of trash, but he repressed the urge to do so considering Our Wuchang possessed quite a lofty status. You can go and rest now. Your opponent is from the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan, and there's no shame in losing to someone like that. Our Wuchang hesitated momentarily before adding. At the time, the Wolf Emperor was transmitting a feeble emotion to me, and that's why it was unable to display anywhere near its full power. Yang Yu's Hangting was beginning to lose his patience. That's called bloodline suppression. Do you not even know something this basic? All dragons are born with this innate ability. Our Wuchang mumbled, but the suppression felt way more severe than it should have been. All right, you can go and rest now. I'll analyze the data from the match. Yang Yu's Hangting no longer had any more patience for Our Wuchang. Earlier, he had told Yu that Our Wuchang had only participated in the event for training purposes, but in reality, with his participation, no one in the Spirit Pagoda would compete against him. Those who did participate in the event had actually entered to clear away potential roadblocks for him. Yet Our Wuchang had been eliminated before he could do anything, so Yang Yu's Hangting was naturally very displeased with him. The distant northern region of the Douluo continent was a world of snow and ice. The northernmost point of the Douluo continent was a region of extreme cold, and only some special soul beasts could reside there. It was said that the soul beasts there possessed something very beneficial to certain soul masters, and that the founder of the Spirit Pagoda had benefited immensely from his trips to this glacial region. As such, the Federation had once scoured through this region in search of the soul beasts that resided there, but the expedition party was met by fierce resistance from the powerful soul beasts there. As a result, many powerful beings had perished, but the Spirit Pagoda was the main beneficiary as it had slain and captured large numbers of soul beasts during that operation. At this moment, there was a group of black figures in this world of snow and ice. All of them wore long black robes and black hooded cloaks to keep out the cold, and they were situated in a valley that was entirely covered in snow and ice. There were over 300 of these black robed figures gathered in the valley, and they were setting up many unknown objects in the area in an orderly fashion. These objects were giving off a peculiar glow, and the entire valley was filled with them, so it was clear that the black robed figures had been at work for quite some time. This was a region that no humans inhabited, and even the surveillance of the Federation's satellites was very lax in this area. On top of that, there were screening soul tools set up all around the valley, so even if a satellite would focus on this area, it would only be able to see a vast expanse of snow and ice. What's the status? A coarse and unpleasant voice rang out. It's already 60% complete, and everything is progressing according to plan. A black-robed figure replied in a respectful manner toward the cave that the first voice had come from. Very good. Continue. Looks like that Yang Yu isn't useless after all. At the very least, he's drawn everyone's attention to that stupid joust for a spouse event of his. Kupiku. The first day of the elimination stage had been a very exciting spectacle for the spectators, but the first round alone had spanned 5 days, and the spectators' enthusiasm was beginning to wane. There were a few matches that were frequently discussed, including Yuan and Yui and Tang Wulin's matches, and Tang Wulin had already become a heavy favorite to make it into the final 10 in the eyes of many. Even though he had put on a very arrogant display during his match, he had backed up his haughty attitude with his actions. At this moment, Tang Wulin was currently busy at work at the Blacksmith Association. Boom. The final hammer blow was struck and all types of elements began to gather in the air, heralding the arrival of the elemental tribulation, devouring heaven and earth. The beautiful silk tulip was standing right beside him, maintaining the effects of devouring heaven and earth in his stead. With each bolt of tribulation lightning that fell, Tang Wulin would voluntarily withstand some of it with his own body. Through his heavenly refinement during this recent period of time, he had become more and more familiar with the tolerance capacity of different metals. Due to the fact that he was able to precisely moderate the tribulation lightning with his infernal lightning vine, his heavenly refinement success rate was extremely high. Chapter 1490. Zhenhe was standing not far away, and even though he was trying his best not to show it, his eyes were filled with amazement. Did Tang Wulin necessarily possess superior forging aptitude compared to him? Zhenhe didn't believe this to be the case. In fact, he had never considered inferiority to anyone when it came to forging aptitude, even his forefathers. However, after reaching the heavenly refinement level, forging aptitude was no longer the only thing that mattered. One's abilities played a very important role as well. Currently, Tang Wulin's heavenly refinement success rate was at around 35%, and this was due to the fact that there were many unpredictable elements in the process of heavenly refinement. In contrast, Zhenhe's heavenly refinement success rate was only 11%. This didn't mean that Tang Wulin had already exceeded Zhenhe in terms of technique and experience. He was still significantly lacking. However, he was far better at handling elemental tribulations than Zhenhe, and that was what resulted in his significantly higher success rate. To put it in simpler terms, if Zhenhe also had devouring heaven and earth and an infernal lightning vine soul spirit, his heavenly refinement success rate would most likely swell to over 60%. Unfortunately for him, he didn't possess such assets, and this made Zhenhe realize that even if one wanted to dedicate all of their focus on forging, cultivation was still necessary. Only a truly powerful soul master could become an exceptional divine blacksmith. Tang Wulin already had no issues performing heavenly refinement on one type of metal, but ever since he began attempting heavenly refinement on alloys, his failure rate had begun to climb. Zhenhe was most amazed by the rate at which Tang Wulin was improving. With each heavenly refinement, Zhenhe felt as if Tang Wulin would undergo an evolution. As a divine blacksmith, he had extremely sharp senses when it came to fundamental changes taking place around him, and he was confident in his own judgment. Not only had Tang Wulin achieved heavenly refinement, he had found something that he needed the most. To him, heavenly refinement was the best method of cultivation. He had already forgotten his initial agreement with Zhenhe, and at this point, he wouldn't be willing to leave even if Zhenhe tried to chase him away. There was no one to disrupt him here, and he also had access to the best facilities for heavenly refinement. Through his heavenly refinement, he was improving both in heavenly refinement itself, as well as in his cultivation. Boom. The final bolt of tribulation lightning fell, and even though the infernal lightning vine had absorbed a part of it, smoke was still rising up from his entire body from the lightning strike. Thankfully, his immensely powerful physical constitution meant that he was able to withstand a lightning strike without sustaining any substantial damage. Unfortunately, the piece of alloy that he was forging clearly hadn't evolved, which meant that he had failed yet again. In its current state, this piece of alloy could only be considered to have undergone faux heavenly refinement. The higher the caliber of a piece of metal, the more powerful the elemental tribulation it would attract. The infernal lightning vine had an insatiable appetite for tribulation lightning, but it was precisely due to its insatiable nature that Tang Wulin didn't dare to allow it to absorb too much in case it self-detonated. The infernal lightning vine had already reached a point of saturation, so he would have to stop for the day. He summoned the infernal lightning vine for examination and discovered that its bluish-purple color had become darker than before. What was even more intriguing was that each and every vine was shimmering with rainbow light that could only be discerned upon careful inspection, and its aura was completely different from when Tang Wulin had first obtained it. Elemental tribulation was feared by countless Saint blacksmiths, yet it was a brilliant catalyst for growth in Tang Wulin's eyes. Not only could it create divine grade metals, it could also help him refine his infernal lightning vine and his own body. After mastering the body sex congenital secret method, Tang Wulin had thought that he had reached his peak physical constitution, but these elemental tribulations had presented a new way for him to refine his own body. Of course, he had to be very careful when using elemental tribulation to cultivate in order to avoid breaking his golden dragon king seal. However, as his physical constitution had continued to improve, he could clearly sense that his next golden dragon king seal showed no signs of loosening. Furthermore, he had a feeling that even if the next seal were to be broken, it wouldn't pose much of a threat to him. During the next half a month, he spent the vast majority of his time in the Blacksmith Association practicing heavenly refinement, and he would meditate whenever his infernal lightning vine and body were unable to bear continuing any longer. He naturally also participated in the rest of the elimination stage during this time, and his luck turned out to be very good as Ao Wuchang was the most powerful opponent he faced. He had encountered one other Soul Douluo after Ao Wuchang, but that opponent wasn't even as powerful as Ao Wuchang and was brushed aside with ease. Thus, he secured 4 victories out of 4 matches and progressed to the round robin stage. All types of promotional material for the round robin stage had already been released, and even seats had been predicted for each group. With only 100 participants left, everything became a lot more manageable. The Spirit Pagoda had announced a 3-day break to improve the venue, following which the round robin stage would officially commence. The stakes in the round robin stage didn't seem to be as high as a loss wouldn't equate to immediate elimination, but every single match was still very important as only the top participant in each group could progress to the final 10. Lots had to be drawn to decide the groups, and all of the 100 remaining participants were required to attend the lot scoring ceremony. As Tang Wulin arrived at the Bright City Sports Stadium, he was looking rather weary and sleep deprived. He cast his gaze around him and discovered many familiar figures, including Hyangkyu's Hangting and Lan Foisey. Following their separation on that day, Tang Wulin had kept tabs on her matches, and he discovered that she really was staying to participate in the rest of the event. She didn't take the initiative to seek out Tang Wulin, and the two of them acted like complete strangers. However, she had left a very strong impression on Tang Wulin, and now, she was also in the top 100. Could it be that she really wanted to fight for a spot in the final 10? Lan Foisey seemed to have sensed Tang Wulin's gaze, and she turned to face him. As their eyes met, Lan Foisey gave him a vicious glare before turning away, leaving Tang Wulin feeling rather bemused. Following the renovations, the entire Bright City Sports Stadium had been transformed. There was only one competition platform left in the entire venue, and in contrast with the square platforms from before, this was a circular platform with a diameter of 300 meters, so it was significantly larger than the previous ones. A giant screen that was 50 meters tall had been constructed across from the rostrum, and even though the lot drawing ceremony was a very grand event, it wasn't open to the general public. As such, there were no spectators in attendance, but the event was going to be broadcasted live to the entire continent. In order to ensure fairness, the Spirit Pagoda had invited personnel from the Battle God Hall to oversee the ceremony. Each participant had received a new number prior to entering the stadium, and a machine had been set up directly under the large screen. The machine was comprised of a massive glass cover, within which were placed 100 small bowls, each of which held a number that corresponded to a certain participant. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.